What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're going to be talking about the XRP price chart. And while not the fact that it's the only one that's green in a sea of red today, but actually, we're going to talk about the progression of what we've seen in the price action happen here in the last couple of weeks. It's been a little while since we put out a video about XRP. 4 weeks to be exact since we've had an XRP video. And the reality is there just hasn't been much progression that has happened in here throughout the cryptocurrency market for the last 4 weeks, as that is where the altcoin market hit the 702 Fibonacci retracement level was really 26 days ago. So 2 days shy of being 4 weeks ago. So we've just been ranging here in the cryptocurrency market. That is no different for Bitcoin over here. Same amount of time, 4 weeks. But the last time we talked about XRP is that it was in a large range and that this range would likely continue as an A, B, C, D, and E before it can conclude itself. As I mentioned in Markets in the Morning today, there's pretty good signs there for that being our low to now maintain a range between 56 and 74 cents before the market can go. But the likelihood is that the price will probably head up once the rest of the market is ready to do it at the same time. Now, you may know that there's been some absences away from Markets in the Morning over the last month or so due to various trips and traveling and things that have been going on. One of those is that I went to Australia and delivered a keynote speech in front of a couple hundred people at the XRP Gold Coast conference. In there, I talk about the cyclical behavior of Bitcoin, the altcoin market, and XRP. So while we are creating what appears to be the ending structure before price can move up, the cold hard reality is we're also waiting for that breakout to happen here in the altcoin market. As you see in the intro, the blockchain backer character gets back to the 702. He breaks through. He goes to the moon. That's what we're all hoping for. It's what we're all cheering for, because the 702 retracement can be the big wicked beast that we all have to fight against. And typically it's breaking through that level is where we actually see expansion happen in the markets. So fortunately, we're here, but the coast is not clear while we still are underneath it. But we do have setups that are positive in here for XRP in the medium term, in the short term, and as I've done in my last couple of videos, in the actual long term, where this is a complete accumulation schematic happening in here. But while people beat their head against the wall saying, why won't price go up? Well, I thought I would actually deliver it to you today, a significant portion of the keynote speech that I actually delivered there in Australia, so you can have an understanding of how this market does operate. So as we go through this, I'm actually going to do minimal editing. Typically, I cut out all of my deep breaths or any long pauses that I do have, but I'm going to try to deliver this to you just in a genuine way without really editing it down. I'm probably only going to do about 2/3 of it because we start really getting into development activity in the last third of it. But understanding the cyclical behavior of Bitcoin, the altcoin market, and XRP may open up your eyes a little bit to how this market actually does behave if you think it operates in any other way than the way that it does. So this is probably the first time I've ever made a video with a PowerPoint presentation in it. But this is what I stood up on stage for 38 minutes and delivered in front of hundreds of people. And I figured, why not do it in front of a few tens of thousands of people as well, right here on the channel. Now, this is going to be incredibly in-depth, and we're going to talk a lot about the whole cryptocurrency market, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about the altcoin market. We're going to talk about cyclical behavior, but it all ties back to this. And I think if you have any other view of it all just being one big trade and it all working together at the exact same time, then this might help you have a better understanding of the cryptocurrency market. And I think it's really important for me to at least express this, and you get to see clearly what my views are of the market, how I look at it. When I come onto the YouTube channel and I make videos, and when I come onto Markets in the Morning and I'm talking, this is how I'm looking at the market. And this is really the data that backs it all up for what shapes my views and my opinions. And when it comes to the XRP price chart, and when it comes to price breaking out, when it comes to bull runs happening in here, all of this data is important. it is not so simple that I'm just going around looking for news articles and saying, ooh, I just found this secret hidden data and that means that we're going to moon. It's that it's all tied together with the whole cryptocurrency market. And I think this is like the most educational stuff and extremely important data for everybody to view. We're going to talk about block reward halvings. We're going to talk about 4-year cycles. We're going to talk about the altcoin market cycles. We're going to talk about the inconsistencies on people's opinions and views, but really kind of tighten it all back in to look at true data and when XRP bull runs happen and why we're at a time where whether or not we want to do Elliott waves or we want to look at, bullish divergences or draw triangles on here, whatever we want to end up doing, that you have to have the proper conditions in the market for that to end up happening. And that where we are right now, there are some favorable conditions in that, but we have to have a true understanding of the entire history of the cryptocurrency market and how it's actually worked in the past. In that, if we are to have something like this happen right now, do those conditions match what has historically happened for crypto with Bitcoin, with the altcoin market, with XRP? And I think this is incredibly important information. So it's long. You could see this. This video is over 40 minutes long, but I do believe it's incredibly informative and I hope that you enjoy it. So let's go. Let's dive right on in. Blockchain performance and historical data, and we're going to tie in XRP, and you will see why. And from here on out, I'm going to do minimal editing, so it's just going to sound like me talking to you in front of a conference. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to be talking about data, and we're going to be trying to remove opinions. There are 3 topics we're going to be discussing, which is going to be Bitcoin historical and cyclical behavior, the altcoin market historical and cyclical behavior, and actually, we're going to skip the third one. We don't have time for it. This video is already going to be way too long. We're going to skip the developer activity stuff. We talk about that all the time. Bitcoin historical and cyclical behavior. Bitcoin has always led the way in crypto, but what is it that triggers the all-time high breakouts? Is it the block reward halving events? Is it magic 4-year cycles? Or is it something else? We'll discuss Bitcoin cycles in 3 different sections. We're going to break it down into block reward halvings. We're going to break it down into 4-year cycles and stock market timing. So block reward halving versus the all-time high. You guys have seen this chart here on the YouTube channel before. Definitely have shown it many times. But what we can see here is that back in 2012, 2013, the all-time high breakout for Bitcoin occurs 84 days after the halving. Then we move over to 2016 and 2017. We touch the all-time high for Bitcoin here 180 days after the halving. And then if you look over here in 2020, 2021, it actually happens 224 days after the halving. But we move over here to 2023 and 2024. Suddenly, it's 51 days prior to the halving. A little bit odd. We notice that it's getting further and further and further. Then suddenly, boom, we're happening right before. So block reward halvings, timing's a little bit weird. What about the whole statement of Bitcoin operates in 4-year cycles? Well, there's a nuance of measuring 4-year cycles. Are we supposed to measure from the bottom to the bottom? Are we supposed to measure from the peak to the peak? Are we supposed to measure based on technical and on-chain activity? If we measure from the actual bottoms of Bitcoin bear markets, we can actually see there was only 3.15 years between the 2011-2012 bottom and the 2014-2015 bottom. Whereas when we look at the distance between 2015, 2019, or 2014, 2018, we actually end up at 3.92 years. It's very close to 4 years. Then we look at the distance between 2018 and 2022, it's 3.94 years. So a little bit of credibility there between bottom of bear to bottom of bear when we just look at these 2 particular data points. And if we ignore the third one, the reality is we only have 3 data points to go off of. And if we're going to say that this data is consistent, we're actually eliminating one of the 3 that we have from our sample size to say it doesn't matter. Either way, you do have very close to 4 years between these 2 bottoms. Now, if you look from top to top, again, we have to ignore a little bit of data from the 3 pieces of data we have in our sample size. However, if we look at the peak between 2013 and 2017, we end with 4.05 years between top to top. Then if we look at the peak between 2017 and 2021, we actually have 3.9 years. Not perfect 4 years, but give it to them, right? It's pretty close, right? But if we go back and we look at the distance between 2011's peak and 2013's peak, it's only 2.48 years. So, the fantasy or the discussion that happens in Bitcoin and crypto is that we operate on these 4-year cycles, but we're ignoring all the data points, which is only 3 that we actually have. And 2 of them were close to 4 years, but one of them we're just not even close. We're 2.5 years. This one, for some reason, gets entirely eliminated. We don't talk about it. It didn't happen. We're not allowed to discuss that one. But if we were to repeat 4-year cycles, right? So this is kind of what a lot of people are talking about right now with Bitcoin being back at its all-time high currently, is that if we're going to continue repeating 4-year cycles, well, then, hey, look, we had 3.9 years, we had 4.05 years between the peaks last time. We just extrapolate that date out from the peak there in November of 2021. We had 3.9 years. That gets us out to October of 2025, right? That's pretty much the thesis of most people in the market who do operate on the 4-year cycle theory. Here we are in April of 2024 thinking, hey, we still have it until October of 2025. We are just starting. We are just getting going, right? But then at the same time, we won't actually see the bottom of that bear until November of 2026, because, well, 4 years out from our past bottom, which was, November, December of 2022, 4 years later, right? So this is kind of what a repeat would look like if you were to continue doing 4 years. But there is one problem. The technical behavior and the on-chain behavior and the altcoin market all suggest that the last cycle was actually only 3.32 years long. The technical behavior suggests that the true technical top of Bitcoin was when Coinbase IPO'd in April of 2021, which is actually back here. And you guys, of course, have seen this on the YouTube channel before, but when I'm delivering this keynote speech in front of hundreds of people, not everybody watches the Blockchain Backer YouTube channel, believe it or not. There are people who do not watch. So I have to explain this, right? That, while we do set a new high here in November of 2021, the technical top of the market actually takes place back here in March, April, and May of 2021 during the laser eyes, diamond hands, Wall Street bets, that whole time period, and that we actually did not have 3.9 years between peaks. We actually only had 3.32 years between peaks. And of course, you guys have seen this, but you take a look at the technical indicators, and the technical indicators all suggest that. We can see that the relative strength index here in 2017, as the peak comes in, boom, all the strength fades away from the market. You look over here to April of 2021, what happens, right? Boom, it all fades away from the market. What are we getting here? And not only are we getting laser eyes, diamond hands, Wall Street bets, what are we getting? Paid celebrities to show altcoins, right? You got Elon Musk leading the charge of Dogecoin. You got Elon Musk on Saturday Night Live, right? This was peak retail euphoria, and all the strength of the market faded away here with the technical indicators from back in April and May of 2021. We can also see this when we actually look at the altcoin market. So when you look at the altcoin market from 2017, you could see the peak of the market, like we're talking about right in here, right? When we start losing all of this strength back in 2017, this is where the peak of the altcoins all happen at. They peak with Bitcoin in 2017. We go back and we look at the altcoin market in 2021. This is what 90% of the altcoins look like, that they all peak here when the technical indicators fall off of a cliff for Bitcoin. This is the peak of the market right here, April, May of 2021. Not November and December of 2021. Also, we can even see it in here outside of the technical behavior that the actual price behavior of Bitcoin is similar to that of being deep in a bear market already. And that if we overlaid that price action that we have right in here, right up in here, it's very similar. I mean, very similar, and I mean ridiculously similar to having been that the top of the market was back here and that we were acting much more like we were in the depths of a bear already, way over here by the time we got to November, and that the peak of the market was back in here, right? Also, you guys saw this also throughout 2022 and 2023 as we were trying to pick out the bottom, right? Not only did the price action look similar to being in the depths of 2018, but it was also the same as being in the depths of 2014's bear already by the time we were in here as well. And that if we just overlay that price action in there, just copy it and paste it, what do we get? Pretty much the exact same thing. And we go the same distances in here as we did back in 2014. So we also see it in the actual technical structural behavior of the price chart of Bitcoin that we were in the depths of capitulation happening in here by the time this was all happening. Again, stating that our top had come much earlier than where we were at that time, even though a new high got set with 90% of the altcoin market peaking there, which as you saw in November of 2017, those peaks came in the top, right? Not way later over here. So it adds a little bit of oddity to going with saying we're doing 4-year cycles when the technical behavior, even the on-chain behavior, and then the altcoin market behavior all suggest our peak was actually way back here. And so this throws a little bit of a wrench into it, saying, hey, it's 4-year cycles, when clearly it was 3.32 years, right? Between the altcoin market roars, right? Those were 3.32 years, not 4 years, right? You can see that here with the altcoin market. Look at it, right? Here's the peaks, right? Here's the next peaks over here, 3.34 years, not 4 years. So if we are doing 4-year cycles, right, that's the big thing, right? If we're doing 4-year cycles right now, and if we are going to use the November of 2021 as our peak, then here we are with 2020's bull market. Here we are with 2016 and 17's bull market. Why are we so early right now? Why is this all happening right now if the peak of the market was right here, right? It doesn't make any sense for 4-year cycle theory for us to already be at the all-time high if that was the peak of the market. And it's because the peak of the market was back here. And that makes a whole lot more sense for us to be way back up in here if you are even going to use 4-year cycle theory or whatever you want. If you think it's going to operate on magical, cyclical timing cycles, right? You just, even the price action, not only the altcoin market, technical behavior, on-chain activity, everything, even the timing of us being back where we're at right now would suggest you peaked back here, which would suggest the last cycle was only 3.32 years or 3.34 years, right? So that's what it all suggests in here that we've actually had. And so it kind of throws a nuance into the 4-year cycle theory in that if we're only going to go 3.32 years, well, then we only have until August of 2024 before this thing all comes to a conclusion and this thing's all over again. Right. And that's the nuance here if we're going to go with these 4-year cycles happening. Right. So there is a problem, though. There's a problem with assuming how much longer do we actually have until this cycle is over. And well, it's because we had 2.48 years between peaks. We had 4.05 years between peaks. And then we have 3.32 years between peaks. It's inconsistent. So does Bitcoin follow 4-year cycles from peak to peak? It doesn't seem like it, right? It doesn't seem like it does. And at least the broader crypto market doesn't, at least. That's for sure. The entire crypto market in general does not. And does Bitcoin take flight at the same time after the block reward halving? We saw 84 days, 180 days, we saw 224 days, and then now 51 days before the halving. Is it consistent with the halving? No. So when it comes to actual Bitcoin cycles, it's more nuanced in time from peak to peak. It's not consistent with block reward halving dates, and it's not consistent with every 4 years. And there's even inconsistency on when the all-time highs break. That even if we do use that peak right back there and say the peak of the market did happen when Coinbase IPO'd in April, that it's not consistent that it's going into the all-time highs at the same time. Right. And so what are we doing here? We're just kind of knocking down walls of fantasy narratives that go on in crypto with Bitcoin, right? It's either block reward halving is the narrative or it's 4-year cycles that are a narrative. The best thing about like battling against narratives and fantasies is all the data is out there for us to look at and determine whether or not that's true or not. And we could just clear as day see it right there. That's not every 4 years. It's not repeating every 4 years to do it at exactly the same time. It's dang close right here to 2020, right? When we look at it from this perspective. But for those who don't believe in that, and those who say, no, there's no way the peak of the market was here in April of 2021, it was absolutely there in November of 2021, well, then throw it all out the window. Throw all 4-year cycle stuff out the window. None of it matters. None of it is real, right? Because look how inconsistent we get at this point, right? So it really just makes a whole lot more sense to say this is the peak back in here. And at least gets you a little bit more consistent if you want to believe in 4-year cycles and you want to believe in block reward halvings, which I just slaughtered that data to show you that's not true. But, get an idea. So with this inconsistency between peaks and the inconsistency between the breakout and the new all-time highs, I'm always asking myself, what is the true catalyst? What is it and what is consistent that causes Bitcoin to go into the all-time highs? Is it the stock market? And so right here, we've got the NASDAQ overlaid on top of Bitcoin. You guys have undoubtedly seen this here on the YouTube channel, right? And you can see with the NASDAQ, every fall that happens in here, Bitcoin falls along with it. Look at the bottom where the bottom comes in January of 2023. Up and away we go until now. And what we could do is zoom in a little bit more on 2022, and then we can start kind of dissecting each narrative that happened in crypto during the 2022 bear fall collapse of everything that happened there in 2022 when you have the NASDAQ, which is in purple, and we have Bitcoin here, which is in the candlesticks, right? You can see the NASDAQ starts to fall. Then what happens? We fall and Luna collapses, right? NASDAQ falls again. What happens? We fall again. Celsius fails, right? Then we waddle along here. The NASDAQ falls. Then what happens? FTX collapses and we fall here with Bitcoin. Look at it all happen. Then go back and relive in every narrative that we had to deal with back there in 2022 and how it was all just following right on along, but every narrative to go along with it. And then what happens? They both recover at the exact same time, coming off the floor to never look back ever again, right from here, right at the beginning of January in 2023. And as you can see, here we are just moving up together with the NASDAQ and Bitcoin. So a little bit of a zoomed out view for you to see that right there, to see the narratives that happened at the time when all of this occurred. But as you can see, we all recover together. Now, Bitcoin being in sync, that, or at least that in sync with the NASDAQ is actually highly unusual, but I thought it was fascinating and I wanted to show it to you. Bitcoin typically doesn't follow day-to-day or month-to-month action with the stock market that closely. So obviously that was very closely timed, but we don't usually actually see the price action of crypto follow that closely, at least over the course of the last 10 or 15 years. It does not follow that closely like this. This has just been kind of the obvious thing to make it it's hard to fight against it when you look at it like through that manner to say, oh, is there some type of correlation that does happen there? It makes it pretty obvious there is, but this is actually pretty unusual to even be this correlated to what we've seen with the NASDAQ and what we've seen over there with Bitcoin. However, Bitcoin has followed the stock market into new all-time highs from far more consistently than block reward halvings or 4-year cycles, which, as we could see here, you can see the inconsistency between the breakouts of the all-time highs for Bitcoin, the inconsistency of the breakouts into all-time highs after the block reward halving. But what we do actually see is we see extreme correlation between when the Dow Jones and the stock market is breaking out into new all-time highs and when Bitcoin breaks out and goes into its bull runs, like I'm showing you right here from back in 2013. This happens within 12 days of each other, that the Dow Jones escapes from the pre-Great Financial Crisis highs. There goes Bitcoin off into the 2013 bull run. Now, you've heard me talk about this on the channel. I've written newsletters about this, gone into super in-depth on this with the Russell 2000, but it's part of the presentation, so we're going to go through it here really quick as well, is that with the Russell 2000, this is typically how we see expansion happen in the market, right? We actually end up seeing the Russell 2000 go, we see the Dow Jones Industrial Average go, and Bitcoin go at the same time. What's really interesting about this one, of course, is you can see the Russell actually even escapes before the Dow, right? So we have a total expansion happening throughout markets, and we have the Russell actually leading the way in here, but Bitcoin, of course, goes along with it. That's of course, this is the pre-Great Financial Crisis high. So this is back in 2013 when all of this is happening. Then we move over to the 2017 bull run for the cryptocurrency market and for Bitcoin, right? So here's the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Here's in blue, this is the Russell 2000. You can see it's ranging during all of Bitcoin's bear market from 2013 all the way to 2017. You can see it's ranging all throughout here. Then what happens? We actually end up having the Russell and we have the Dow escape from the ranges on the exact same day. They go into expansion. Look who comes along for the ride. Bitcoin goes along for the ride at the exact same time while they're all expanding. What about 2020? What about after COVID? Story is exactly the same once again. You can see that the Russell 2000 is escaping with the Dow, right? That's important to notice right there. Notice that the Russell actually leads the way here in 2012 and 2013. The Russell actually leaves on the exact same day as the Dow here in 2016, and the Russell leaves on the exact same day as the Dow Jones over here in 2020. We go into a broader expansion throughout the stock market. Who goes along for the ride at the exact same time? Bitcoin, right? The one time where we got a new high in the Dow Jones Industrial Average back in 2019 over here, the Russell did not go along with it, and neither did Bitcoin at that time. However, when we see these expansions happening here with the Russell and with the Dow, what do we typically see? We see Bitcoin going on for expansion. And this was the case here for 2013, 2017, and 2021's bull runs for Bitcoin. And that look at the timing of them. These are all happening within 12 days, within 56 days, within 33 days. What were we just talking about with the block reward having? We're talking 90 days, 180 days, 224 days, and then 51 days before, right? Total inconsistency that's happening there with the block reward halving, and total inconsistency when it comes to peaks in the cryptocurrency market from peak to peak, right? But what's the weird thing going on in markets right now? Like I just showed you in 2013, 2017, and 2021, the Russell goes with the stock market. The Russell goes with the Dow every single time. And what's not happening right now? We're not seeing the Russell go. We're not seeing a broader expansion happen throughout the market right now. And that's very odd to see happening in markets. And of course, you hear me just kind of scratching my head on these things. And I'm just like, this is very different. This is very weird to see this happening here in the markets right now, because that's not consistent with every past bull run for Bitcoin, where we see expansions truly happening throughout all markets. And that's clearly not happening here right now in the market. So, when you think of it that way, when you think of how the Russell is not expanding with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it's kind of like reflecting on what it was like in the cryptocurrency market back in 2021. Like we were just talking about how most of the market peaked out right back in here, right? But then like 90% of the market did not go into these new highs when Bitcoin did in November of 2021, and like Ethereum did, right? And Solana, where the market really consolidated into a few assets back in 2021 in the crypto market, right? That's the same thing we're seeing happening in here, right? Like the Dow 30 is where all this consolidation is happening into in these major caps. But the rest of the market is not doing it. The rest of the market is just into this like retrace, like right here, which is like what we saw happen in the crypto market back in 2021. So let's go ahead and move on. And that's important to talk about, just talking about the historical behavior of Bitcoin. And like, it just gives you a lot to think about. Like if you're thinking it's block reward halvings, if you're thinking it's the magic of 4-year cycles that end up happening, or do you actually see that correlation happen in there, that it's actually very tied to the stock market? And to each person, you can live in an echo chamber of whatever you want, believe whatever you want. And if you think I didn't talk like this when I was standing on stage in front of hundreds of people, I did. But yeah, so, and that's like what I said at the beginning of this thing, is trying to remove opinions and focus on data. So you've seen all the data in here. You can choose what you want to believe, right? You got 90 days after the block reward halving, 180, 221, or 224, and then 51 days before. Is there consistency there, right? Is it the block reward halving? You decide, right? You can look over there at 4-year cycles. You could decide, no, the peak was November of 2021, even though all the technical behavior, even though the altcoin market, right? 90% of the altcoin market peaks over there in April and May of 2021. You decide. Is that data important? Does that make any sense? Up to you to decide, right? Or is it the stock market? 84 days after the Dow Jones sets the new all-time high, Bitcoin sets the new all-time high, inconsistent with 4-year cycles and inconsistent with the timing of the block reward halving. Where here we are, way before the block reward halving, but once again, Dow Jones sets new all-time high, boom, Bitcoin sets new all-time high. But let's move on. And what we're going to talk now is about the historical and cyclical behavior of the altcoin market. So when does the altcoin market rise? Historically, during Bitcoin's expansions into new highs or during Bitcoin distribution, i.e. retraces, right? So if we look at expansionary times, you can look back to 2017 when Bitcoin's butting its head up against the all-time high, right? We could see that Bitcoin finally goes into true expansion in here, escaping from the all-time high. Who tags along and goes for the ride? The altcoin market in 2016 and 2017. Now, what's funny about that? When does XRP take off, right? Like BCB, you said this was an XRP video. What is going on here? Now we're tying it together, right? So now you're going to get to see that, right? So when does the altcoin market go? In expansion. When does XRP go? Oh, how about that? Into expansion. Flip of the switch, magic, all the money, world reserve currency, call it what you want. It moves with the market. The whole market is going here into expansion, and that's the exact time that the price of XRP takes off, right? So looking over here at 2020 and 2021's expansion, what happens? Bitcoin gets into the all-time high. What occurs? Expansion happens throughout the market right in there. Now, one thing to take a look at Bitcoin back at the all-time high, because this is kind of where we're at right now in the altcoin market. If we are going to see expansion happen for Bitcoin, you see people crying over their altcoins as if, oh no, and I get it, right? Like I did a poll, I even talked about this in my last video. 2/3 of the people that are here in the market right now came in at the peak of 2021, so they don't have any type of experience to draw back on to see what markets were like. So the best I can do is tell you from me going through these experiences and me showing you them on charts of what it was like at that time, right? This is what it looked like in 2020 and 2021 with the altcoin market as Bitcoin was back at the all-time high. Here's all of their 2017 and 2018 peaks. Here is the altcoin market right down in here. There's Bitcoin at the all-time high, right? Bitcoin goes plowing through it, off and away we go, boom, then goes the altcoin market as Bitcoin goes into expansion. But again, look at it at where it's at here at this time as it's back at the all-time high. Now, look at our current altcoin market right now with Bitcoin back at the same location. Does it look similar? Are you dealing with anything different? And actually, the reality was this was far worse because most of the market had drawn down really, 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 really bad. Even XRP had pulled down like 96% during that time versus 88% here in 2023 and 2022. The difference between pulling down 88% and pulling down 96% is that's like another 80% drop beyond that. So this actually hasn't been, for a lot of these assets, hasn't been as bad. And like for Ethereum, not nearly as bad. Ethereum was the same thing. It was like a 95% drop versus an only 80-something% drop that it's experienced there in 2022 and 2023. But either way, you can see it right here. There you are back at the highs. There you are back at the highs. Do you see that this market is acting any differently right now than it was back then? Gives you kind of a reference point to look at things, and if you think this time is different, at least in regards to that action. But moving on from expansions, we're going to talk now about distributions. And so there's other times where we see the altcoin market really take off, and that's actually into distribution. So back in 2017, as Bitcoin was topping, as Bitcoin was going into its ending distribution phase in here, we could see the altcoin market really took off, right? So alt season number one's way back in here, right? And then alt season number 2 takes place here at the distribution phase for Bitcoin in 2017 and 2018. XRP, guess what? You're no different. You happen to take off and do your bull run with the rest of the market, with the distribution phase. So you saw XRP take off in expansion, and then what do you see? You see XRP take off into distribution. Removes a lot of the magic, removes a lot of the narrative building and like in the fantasy, right? And like here I am doing that for Bitcoin, but I'm also doing that for XRP at the same time. Flipping the switch, right? World reserve, like it's going to all pile in and it's all going to zoom. That doesn't happen. That's like not the historical behavior. The historical behavior is in expansions of Bitcoin or in distributions of Bitcoin. And you see that here, that it's operating with the rest of the market in 2017 in both the expansion and into the distribution phase. That's the moment in which XRP takes off in here. Now, you're thinking to yourself, but why isn't it moving up right now when everything else is? Here is this phase, just to give you an idea. XRP takes off in the expansion or in the distribution. What about that time in between? Well, here you are in 2017, from May 17th of 2017 all the way over here to December 11th, 2017. Bitcoin rises 882% in that time period. What does the price of XRP do from May 17th to December 11th? It's down 50%. Negative 50% with Bitcoin, up 882%. You want to talk about pain? You want to talk about toxic? You want to talk about a community that is just completely falling apart in a laughingstock? That's the moment. Negative 50% versus plus 882. You think Bitcoiners can run around and just act all cocky? That was a moment that they were, for sure. But we also saw the same thing here in the distribution phase of Bitcoin in 2021. And it was kind of an interesting phase that we had there in 2021 because expansion and distribution pretty much just like bled together because it all happened so quick within 4 months. But you could see these peaks coming in here into the retrace distribution for Bitcoin at the same time right in here. What do you know? Where does XRP have its big push? The same place with the rest of the market. It's not unique. It's not different. It happens at the same time, right? And then, one of them we missed. Let's go back to 2013. Look at XRP's peak at the distribution phase of Bitcoin. So we're seeing it over and over again, right? You can deny it and build a narrative and a fantasy for Bitcoin or for XRP, whatever it is that you want to do. But the reality is, at least when it comes to XRP's price, it tends to run during distribution phases and during expansion phases for Bitcoin. And then we take one step back and then we say, well, when does Bitcoin go into expansions or into distributions? And that tends to be tied with the rest of the market, right? Or at least their stock market. No. It's block reward halvings. It's 4-year magic cycles. Okay, whatever you want, man. You could see the data, but you could also see the data for XRP too. So I'm not here to build enemies. I'm not here to get you to hate me because I'm talking like this. It's because we do have so many narratives in the market, and there's so many loud voices that have built their business around selling the ideas of these fantasies that exist out there. And I'm not just talking about XRP. I'm talking about Bitcoin. I'm talking about crypto. I'm talking about everything. And that when we don't look at the data, newcomers all sit here and buy into this stuff. Like it's crazy. But we see the data, right? The data says Bitcoin expands with the stock market performance and XRP expands and goes into bull runs with Bitcoin expansions and distributions, right? There is no flip of the switch. There is no craziness. There is no nothing. It's all happening at very specific times in the market for XRP. Distributions, expansions, you see it all. And so we come back here. We come back to talking about this. We're done talking about that. We're not going to dive into developer activity. If you want developer activity stuff, go subscribe to the newsletter. But we come over here. We do all these Elliott wave counts on XRP. We're like, yeah, we've done them all. We've got the A, B, C, D, E's, right? And then we've got the A, B, C, D, E's. And then now we're in E. And then now we're in E with an E. And it's like, well, is it time? Is it time for something like that to happen? And it comes back to this. Is Bitcoin going to expand? Because if Bitcoin is going to expand, what is going to happen? We've seen it every time. We see that if Bitcoin expands, the altcoin market expands. And if the altcoin market expands, who else expands? This guy. This guy expands. So it goes beyond just looking at, can we count Elliott waves? Can we look at these squiggly oscillator lines and tell us if it's ready, or if we can draw trend lines and make these cool triangles that tell us, oh, we're getting super compressed and we're reaching the apex of it all, right? Those are all true. But when you remove all of it and you say, but when does it happen? When? It only happens during expansions and during distributions. And whether or not Bitcoin goes into expansion or whether or not Bitcoin goes into distribution, those are both favorable outcomes that have historically led to XRP price rises. So do you have the elements in the market for something like that to happen based on blockchain performance and historical data? You do. You have those elements there, and you have narratives starting to form, right? You got Ripple doing the stablecoin thing that's going to be put on the XRP ledger. You got the automatic market makers that are coming out in 2 days, right? You've got those types of things can draw the attention of the masses, which increase user activity levels. You increase user activity levels, it brings on builders because they see opportunities to make money. It sets off a positive feedback loop, and you have all those things happening at the same time. But the cold hard reality is, are we in expansion or distribution? And the reality is we have to be in one of them, right? We have to be going into expansion or distribution over here with Bitcoin, with where it's at right now. And either one of those are positive for the altcoin market and positive for the XRP price chart. So I get it. We all get beaten down. This has been a brutal range of grinding, right? But when you remove all of that and you look at it from the aspect of, look, there's only 2 ways that XRP's price ever moves. And it's not secrets upon secrets. It is not flipping the switch. It is none of that stuff. It is when the price of Bitcoin expands or distributes. And regardless, one of those has to be happening, right? So if you find yourself beaten up by this range that just continues to go on and on and on and on and on, we've done the Elliott wave counts, right? This is a normal range. This is how these things happen in contractions. This is how they happen with A, B, C, Ds, and Es. But ranges are brutal because you're looking for direction, you're looking for trend. And we always say it, ranges by design are chaotic. You can't figure out an upward or downward trend when price is ranging sideways. So people just emotionally get beat up in them. So when you take a bigger look out and you look at what's going on throughout the whole cryptocurrency market and just where we're at currently right now, we look for all the positive conditions. And a lot of them are there, right? And heck, if Brad Garlinghouse is right, which I hope he is, man. He says that we're going to go to a $5 trillion market cap here in 2024. If he's right, what do you think is going to happen with this guy? So, that's hard for me to latch on to, but I can latch on to the ideas of expansions and distributions. And I see those things there throughout the market. So it gives me some optimism. And, even from an Elliott wave counter, even from someone who does crashing structures, right? I teach all about these things with crashing structures. We have all those conditions happening in here, rolling back up to wave 4, then you set the new low. You've got all these things happening in here, but ranges just beat people up for a long time, right? But the good news is it seems pretty likely. It seems pretty good that for that to be our low. But now we're just waiting to see if we can get this guy to go too, because that's been the condition that we really always need. So fingers crossed we do get it soon. And hopefully I didn't upset too many people by just talking in the way that I like to talk. As you guys know, I don't have any sponsors on my YouTube channel, and I find it that I enjoy it that way because it gives me the freedom to really talk however I want to talk. I don't have anybody I have to appease. I don't have to worry about upsetting anybody or any type of narrative that a sponsor wants, because I just kind of talk however I want and say whatever I want, and that's the freedom that I am fortunate to have. So I write newsletters and create videos, right? And if you want to learn more about my views and like data, that's how I try to do things. You can check that out over here on bcbacker.com, where there's over 40 videos and a lot of discussions here about the historical behavior of the cryptocurrency market and a lot of things that have happened, that things that improved odds and tokenomics and all that emotional behavior, all that emotional management and all that good stuff over here. That's available here on bcbacker.com. Or you can find a lot of the data, developer stuff, and research, and all these audio recordings that I do over here on Substack, where I write a newsletter and I put lots of work and lots of research into these things as well. And that's available over here on blockchainbacker.substack.com. There's links in the descriptions of each of my videos to bcbacker.com and to blockchainbacker.substack.com. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this view and kind of seeing when does the price of XRP move. We have a lot of the technical structures on the chart. We're super developed in an accumulation range, but what are those things that we also need? We need expansions or we need distributions, and it seems like we're on the brinks of those types of things happening throughout the market. So a reason to be optimistic and also knocking down some of the narrative walls at the same time. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.